Something is happening on social media right now that has never happened before. Facebook is on its heels. Now, you might say, Brady, Facebook hasn't been on top of social media for quite a while now, which is fair. But remember, Facebook's parent company, Meta, also owns Instagram. And just because a platform isn't the most popular with young people, that doesn't mean that it's slipping. And yet, consider this from The Verge. Quote, Facebook's decade-long streak of nonstop revenue growth has come to an end. The social network reported its first ever yearly decline in revenue for the second quarter. The overall profit for its parent company, Meta, fell 36%. Now, what's causing this decline? Well, quote, Apple's Ask app not to track prompt on iPhones has made its ads less effective, and now a rapidly slowing economy has caused advertisers to pull back on their spending. Meanwhile, and this is where things get interesting, quote, meanwhile, in its effort to compete with TikTok, Meta is re-architecting Facebook and Instagram to place an emphasis on short videos and posts that its system recommends to people. On a call with analysts, Zuckerberg said that the percentage of content people see in Facebook and Instagram that comes from accounts they don't follow will more than double next year. Let me say that again. The percentage of content people see in Facebook and Instagram that comes from accounts they don't follow will more than double next year. Now, how did we get here? The thing is, to grasp why what's happening right now is such a big deal, you need to understand why Facebook has been immune to something like this for so long. So think about when you first joined Facebook. Why did you do it? For me, I was in high school, and my friends had begun migrating away from MySpace to this new platform called Facebook. It was all the rage. And I remember being resistant to that change. Like, I liked MySpace, but the more my friends started using Facebook, the more I was compelled to switch. And this simple concept is where Facebook's success has come from. It's called the social graph. And broadly defined, a social graph is just a network of personal connections, like you hitting the like button on this video. A simple concept to understand, and yet one that has been virtually impossible to compete with. Because once Facebook had a head start with your friends and your family, once your social graph was locked in on Facebook's platform, well, Facebook now had a competitive advantage that would protect it against all challengers. So much so that anytime a new platform would come around and introduce a novel feature to social media and popularize it, Facebook would just say, hey, thank you for popularizing this new feature. Well done, this feature is mine now. Because the social graph trumps all. And sometimes this took different forms, right? Like in 2012 with Instagram, Facebook just made them an offer that they could not refuse. $1 billion that at the time was considered to be an outlandish overpay. Why did they do it? Well, here's what Zuckerberg wrote in an email to Facebook's then CFO in 2012, quote, one way of looking at this is that what we're really buying is time. Even if some new competitor springs up, buying Instagram, Path, Foursquare, etc., now will give us a year or more to integrate their dynamics before anyone can get close to their scale again. Within that time, if we incorporate the social mechanics they were using, those new products won't get much traction since we'll already have their mechanics deployed at scale. That final sentence is the key. Those new products won't get much traction since we'll already have their mechanics deployed at scale. The scale is the social graph that Facebook already had with its users. The mechanics are those novel features or experiences that these other platforms had popularized. So in this case, Facebook's social graph had already given them such a head start that they had the luxury of just buying up competitors that could pose a threat to them. And if this doesn't quite make sense to you, if you're no longer even really using Facebook, just think about Facebook memories. Okay, when you open Facebook and you see a notice that says, hey, here's what you were up to 8 years ago. That is incredibly powerful. But what happens when a social platform refuses Facebook's acquisition offer? I mean, Instagram gave in. What happens if you refuse? Enter Snapchat. 2013, Snap turned down $3 billion from Facebook. Then again, in mid-2016, Snapchat turned down another offer from Facebook. Now, do you remember what else happened in mid-2016? Instagram launched a brand new feature, Stories. Popularized by Snapchat, of course. I distinctly remember what mid-2016 was like because Stories were the biggest thing on social at the time, but they could only be experienced on Snapchat. And mid-2016, we had hit this breaking point where older folks in my sphere that had been resistant to Snapchat for so long were finally about ready to make the jump. And then what happens? Instagram says, hey, you don't need to abandon your social graph just for stories. We'll bring stories to you. And just like that, Snapchat's momentum gets curbed. Facebook said, you won't accept our acquisition offer, Snapchat? Fine. We'll make your best feature our own. And all throughout the 2010s, I'm thinking to myself, how could Facebook ever lose the throne? Social platforms are built on being social, and the longer Facebook is in the lead, the more their competitive advantage will be. Well, what about a platform that doesn't care about a social graph? What about a platform that doesn't need you to connect to your friends and family on it because you only need one friend on this platform? The algorithm. This is from The New Yorker. Quote, last month, Blake Chanley, TikTok's president of Global Business Solutions, was asked if he was concerned about competition from existing social media networks like Facebook. Chanley, who spent more than 12 years at Mark Zuckerberg's company before moving to TikTok, dismissed the idea. Quote, Facebook is a social platform. They've built all of their algorithms based on the social graph, he said, referring to the network of links to friends, family, and casual acquaintances that Facebook users painstakingly assemble over time. Quote, we are an entertainment platform, and the difference is significant. For more than a decade, there have been barriers to entry to gain traction in the highly competitive and cutthroat world of social media. Just like that, TikTok says, nah, we're not going to play by your rules because the game is rigged, so we'll invent a new game. And now, for the first time in its history, Facebook is playing defense because they can't just buy TikTok now, and the ultimate trump card of the social graph, well, that doesn't play on TikTok. So what can Facebook do? Well, they can ask the American government to step in, as reported by BuzzFeed News. Quote, Facebook is so pissed that TikTok is the one thing they can't beat that they've turned to geopolitical arguments and lawmakers in Washington to fight their fight, end quote. And when that doesn't work, it's time to play catch up. And that brings us to where we are today. Facebook, in the midst of its first ever yearly drop in revenue, trying to compete in a new game it has never played before. And how's it going? Not well. Were you a part of the new feed that Instagram tested a couple of months ago? Because I was, and it was dreadful. It scrolled like TikTok, so I was forced to look at whatever post was in front of me. But the posts weren't from my friends or family, my social graph. The posts weren't even interesting to me, though. Facebook gave me the worst of both worlds. It said, look, we won't show you your friends or family, and we won't show you other content you like because we don't really have that kind of algorithm yet. We're trying. It's not there yet. It was so bad that Instagram walked it back and said they had to make some changes. So, what does this all mean for you and for our churches for the next few years? Well, Cal Newport has an interesting theory. Quote, this all points to a possible future in which social media giants like Facebook may soon be past their long stretch of dominance. They'll continue to chase new engagement models, leaving behind the protection of their social graphs, and in doing so, eventually succumb to the new competitive pressures this introduces. It's here that I find optimism. The era of social media monopolies has been unhealthy for our collective digital existence. The internet at its best should be weird, energetic, and exciting, featuring both homegrown idiosyncrasy and sudden trends that flash supernova bright before exploding into the novel elements that spur future ideas and generate novel connections. This exuberance was suppressed by the dominance of a small number of social media networks that consolidated and controlled so much of online culture for so many years. Things will be better once this dominance wanes. In the end, TikTok's biggest legacy might be less about its current moment of world-conquering success, which will pass, but more about how, by forcing social media giants like Facebook to chase its model, it will end up liberating the social internet. End quote. There's one more angle of this whole thing I'd like to explore. Facebook is one of the world's 25 most powerful and profitable companies, and it's a publicly traded company, which means that it has shareholders that demand ever-increasing profits. And what we're seeing right now is what inevitably happens when a lust for more profits is what drives your business and our economy. It is never enough. It doesn't matter how big you are, how powerful you are, how historically successful you've been, ever-increasing profits are the only acceptable outcome. And even if you have to abandon what makes your platform great to chase what's hot right now, you do it because profit is God. Now, of course, for those of us aiming to live with a Christ-centered worldview, we know, Paul told the younger Timothy, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Jesus tells us from the Sermon on the Mount, you cannot serve both God and money. My closing remarks on this, as it relates to all of us, is that it is unrealistic for any organization to be trending up and to the right indefinitely. The idea of never-ending growth is a carrot on a stick. It might motivate action, but it is something that you can never obtain. Yet, so long as it's what motivates us, the more likely we are to compromise our integrity for it. The greater the chance we start to bend our ideals to hopefully, potentially grab it. When the reality is, it's always going to be out of our grasp. The thing is, when I see Facebook doing what it's doing now, it reminds me that none of us are immune to this pull. And yes, there are things that we can do structurally to shield ourselves from it. Church entities being nonprofits. For us at Nucleus, my organization, not taking investor capital or being a publicly traded company means not having to deliver quarterly profits or else. It means the ultimate measure of our platform isn't the bottom line, but rather how well are we serving our churches. So yes, there are things that can be done to opt out of this mentality. But the reality is the pull will always be there. We live in this kind of society. And so those capitalistic expectations will inevitably seep into the church world. We need to resist that. Effectiveness is good, of course. Fulfillment of mission should be our aim so long as it doesn't cost us our integrity. And as for what's next on social media, who's to say? We are on the precipice of a new era, though. That is for sure. I'm a believer in taking advantage of the opportunity that currently exists rather than trying to predict what the next opportunity might be. And that is short-form video right now. We recently did 3 videos on how churches can take advantage of this, linked in the description and on the video. If you liked this conversational style of video, you'll probably also like our weekly podcast with my co-host, Alex Mills. It's the Pro Church Tools Show every Wednesday, where we answer listener questions about church as we try and navigate this biggest communication shift in 500 years. And if you want to connect with me personally, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter are best at Brady Shearer on all platforms. And thanks as always for your time, attention, and trust. Subscribe if you haven't already here on YouTube, and we'll talk soon.